Every once in a while, you say yes to something with which you have no idea what you're saying yes to. I often laugh when I do marriage prep. They have no idea what they're getting into, right? Look back on my own days in seminary, and I think what I said yes to was an image of what I thought the priesthood would be, rather than an experience that now 18 years later I look back upon, and certainly I have had to say yes every day since then, but every once in a while you say yes to something with which you have no idea what you're getting into. Spent a lot of time in this room in the last 5 years. Spent a lot of time, I think, knowing that one day, today would happen. I remember the first day that I had a serious conversation with Bishop Fobb. I had been director of seminarians for 12 years, and I don't think anybody here is a seminarian, so I can say this. I knew it was time for me to leave the vocations office when I didn't like seminarians anymore. In other words, it's just a lot of them, I was just tired. Let's just say that. And I'm not quite sure how things like this happen. I walked into his office just to get to know him, and I had all expectations of leaving there, asking him to consider replacing me in the vocations office. I had all intents and purposes of leaving his office with less to do, and I walked out with him asking me to think about this thing called strategic planning. And every once in a while, God asks you to do something with which you have no idea what you're saying yes to. Yesterday, Bishop Fobb shared his heart with you, and I guess maybe the only authentic way to follow that is to do the same with you. I can hear confessions all day long. It's my favorite thing to do. At the heart of it, I'm a spiritual director. I'm a confessor. At the heart of it, I'm somebody who likes parish life, but my sweet spot where I've always felt called is just to listen to the echo of people's interior life and just kind of celebrate what God's doing. I've never considered myself to be a leader, much less an organizer or a director or anything like that. I just love Jesus. And I love his church. And sometimes you say yes to things with which you have no idea what you're saying yes to. Last 5 years, I felt a lot like Joseph sometimes. Directing a priest on retreat one day, and he was praying with Joseph's leading Mary and Jesus to Egypt. And he's praying, and in the prayer experience, he's Joseph. And he says to Mary in his prayer, I don't know how to get to Egypt. Never been there before. And Mary says back to him, it's okay. I know that. But I would rather get lost with you in the desert than to get to Egypt without you. There's been a whole lot of times, in the last 5 years where I have looked at him and said, I don't know where we're going. But there's a bunch of people who are looking at us who expect us to go somewhere. Never done this before. Our team has never done this before. And if I would have known what I was saying yes to, maybe I would have said no. I have the same fears of failure just like I think a lot of people in this room. I've felt a lot in the last 5 years that I've been standing in front of people like you today in my inadequacy and leading from my inadequacy, which I know is just merely a place of dependency, and I hate being dependent on God, to be honest with you. Now, I know that that's where the fruitfulness is, right? But it's hard. And every once in a while, you say yes to something with which you have no idea what you're saying yes to. Today's first reading is from Exodus. You think Moses knew what he was getting into? Like when he was facing the Red Sea, and he's like, oh, I'm not going to say what he said. Matt, right? How do you think that felt? He turns around, he's got 1 million people all looking at him. You know what they're all asking? Where are we going? And Moses says, it's a bunch of water in front of us. Or they get through the Red Sea and they've been wandering for 10 years, and he wakes up one morning and he says, I wonder what we're going to do today. We're going to wander in the desert with no water and no Walmart. For 40 years, you think Moses knew what he was saying yes to? They didn't pierce his hands right here. He'll actually fall down. You got nothing but flesh. Right? Artists do that because it's a little it's too graphic for us to actually see what they really did. They actually put that in between two bones right here. There's a nerve here. It's the most excruciating pain you can feel. And what has to happen is you have to press up on your feet because your hands are here. You have to choose to breathe. And you have to spin up to breathe. So with every breath for 6 hours, every breath, he spins on that nerve just to breathe. His back, it was scourged. That's what happens every time he goes up and down on the cross, to his back. Sometimes you say yes to something with which you have no idea what you're saying yes to. And sometimes you say yes to someone. And even though you have no idea what you're saying yes to, you know who you said yes to. And every time in the last 5 years where I have just had no clue what to do, all I know is there's only one place to look. It's about this point in the weekend where a lot of us, it might be dawning on you that you really didn't know what you were saying yes to. When you said yes to this thing called whatever it is they roped you into to get you here, right? And if you look deep inside your heart with everything that's there, I just want to encourage you that you didn't say yes to your DRE or your coordinator of youth formation or whatever the title is these days. You didn't say yes to your pastor. You didn't say yes to those teenagers. You didn't say yes to a year or a commitment. Every one of us in here said yes to a person. Now, he may have used the mouth of your pastor, or maybe he even used the image of teenagers to convict your heart. But we cannot say yes to your pastor or your DRE or your coordinated youth formation or your teenagers. You can't say yes to that unless we have first said yes to him. Because I'm quite sure that the desert looked a lot different for Moses than what he thought it would. I guarantee you that the last 5 years of my life look completely different than what I thought they would. And when we say yes to an image of what we think things are going to look like, we're always going to be disappointed. And then we'll lose our way along the way. That's why last night and all day today we've talked about him. That's why this morning we talked about living in him. And everything that's in your heart and all the things that you long for and desire, if you pay attention, is actually him lifting those up to the surface. Now, here's what I've learned in the last 5 years. There's a difference between ruminating and relating. Like when a lot stirs in my heart and I just get caught up in my head and I'm trying to figure it out, I'm just ruminating. But when everything is here, actually gets put here, and everything that is here eventually makes its way to here, well, now I'm no longer looking at the challenge or the inadequacy or the task or whatever. I'm looking at the one who called me, and you're looking at the one who called you. I want to say thank you. I want to say thanks for being here today, but I want to say thanks for what I see God doing in your lives at this stage of our weekend together. A person who I trust dearly one day looked at me when I wanted to quit. And he said, if it was easy, everybody do it. If it were easy, well, we wouldn't be here today, right? It's not easy. And I'm not talking about youth formation or keeping up with today's teens. I'm talking living in that chair. That ain't easy. But every once in a while, you find somebody who is, and their life is so attractive. And not only can you not get your eyes off of them, but it makes you want to live in the chair also. Our teenagers are begging us to show them in some way that he's real and that life is possible. And if we have the courage to say yes, even when we don't know what we're saying yes to, if we have the courage to do everything that we can to live in the chair, if we say yes to a person, not to a concept, then imagine what could happen. What would have happened if Moses said no? But imagine what did happen because he said yes. And right now, God is asking us not only to say yes to him, but to say yes to him, especially if it's dawning on us that we don't know exactly what we said yes to. And so now's about the time where we go back to him. It's about him. So I invite you just to look here. Just look at the cross. And imagine for a moment if that were not merely a processional cross behind an altar, but imagine if you were actually at the cross, standing here, and he was looking right at you. In fact, let's close our eyes just for a second. Just close your eyes. Just close your eyes. And just for a moment, imagine that you're at the cross. Just imagine Jesus on the cross. You can see the wood. You can almost feel it with your eyes. As you glance from the bottom of the cross, you eventually can see his feet, that nail. You can see his legs. As you just continue to glance upward, eventually you see, well, you see his face. What's his face like? What's his eyes like? He asks you to come close to the cross. Just imagine you kind of inching ever closer to the cross so that you can almost embrace it. And as you look up, with his eyes looking at you, he looks at you now and says, what do you need? What do you want? It's between you and him, the caller, not the call. Stay there a little bit. Have a conversation with our Lord. you could bring anybody to the cross with you today, who would you want to put at the cross? Maybe you've got folks in your family who you'd love to be at that cross with you. Folks you're praying for. Maybe it's your teenagers but if you could bring anybody to the cross with you today, who would you want to bring? Just remain seated. And let's bring our prayers to the cross.